Hello, my crafty people out there, and it's time for our weekly project. If you have not been here before, my name is Stephanie, and I upcycle clothing, generally things I thrift from my local stores or estate sales. And we either make new clothing, accessories, or something in between. So, I have had this shirt for a hot minute. It's a tux shirt. It's got it's even got the little band back here for the tie. So yeah, it's a tuck shirt. It's nothing fancy, but it's in good shape. And there's not any stains on the front. There's a few little spots over here that look like ink maybe, but that's not going to inhibit us from our project. So I have an idea. I always have an idea. And I think you'll enjoy it. And I believe you could do this in 30 minutes, probably easily. So it's not going to be complicated, going to be fast, something fun you could do on the weekend, wear it the next week. So if you want to follow along, like, subscribe, let me know what you think, and I'll catch y'all at the table. All right, everybody. This is our tuxedo shirt. Nothing fancy. Pretty simple. I think it's a Stafford. And the collar is kind of shot. I mean, it's okay. I could press it out, but it's a little dingy, and I really don't want this particular shirt to have a collar. So we're going to need to make a collar pattern. Now, of course, we could just go pluck a pattern out of the box that I'm sure, or the drawer that I have, and copy a pattern out of something. That's fine. But let's try making our own pattern like we did the boat neck. So let's give it a whirl. And let's take this off to the side. Now this is a pink shirt, obviously, that I have, that I love to wear. And it's got a nice, comfortable collar. Now it is a pilgrim style, peasant style. Good Lord, why have I always got that mixed up? Peasant style form. So it's got the sleeves that are attached directly to the back and the bodice that help form the neck. That I don't really care about. What I do like is the shape of this neck. So I want to trace it. And I thought, now I might be making this more complicated than it should be. But I'm going to take my tracing paper and I'm going to fold it over this piece of white cardboard. Now it's not fancy. It's just a piece of white cardboard. But I want to make sure I've got enough to go on each side of the cardboard. So I'm going to cut me a piece, a really rough cut, because that doesn't matter. And I'm going to fold it over my piece of cardboard. Now, obviously, this is way more than I need, but that's okay. I'm not really concerned about that part. I'm not even concerned about how this gets folded over. I am concerned with having two sides to this piece of tracing paper and a hard surface to work on. So I've got my shirt folded to where the neckline looks, up. I'm going to put this in. Bear with me, y'all. This looks crazy. But I think it will help me make the perfect neck, front and back. Because the back doesn't go down as far, but it does go down a little bit because your neck's not super straight, obviously. So I'm just going to push this up. Make sure, that doesn't work really well. Push it up like that. Go inside and push it up. That would be easier. Like that. And then I'm going to take some quilt clips and clip it into place. I have no idea why I can't talk this morning. I did have my coffee. Like that. Now, we're not looking for absolute perfection. We're looking for a shape. We're looking to be able to get a shape out of this process. And I think we can. Even if we only get half and we fold it over, that would be fine for me too. So Let's take our little marker here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take a pencil. I don't feel like washing this out of this shirt. It's clean. And we're just going to draw around. Now, you could probably eyeball this. We'll fold it in half and make sure it's even. And then we'll do this. Like this. We're just getting the basic shape down. Saving ourselves hopefully a little time. I'm not sure. I'm going to drop it out. And there is our neckline in rough format. So we're going to fold it in half, kind of even it up. We didn't need the whole neckline. We just needed enough to make one, a half of one. Kind of look through. Yeah, I think that'll work. So let's just, let's cut it out and see what we got. I think I'm going to cut from this side. This side looks a little more even. I'm just going to cut. And we're going to make it nice and smooth. Like this. And I'm just going to cut about a 2-inch, maybe a little more around here. That way we've got a good healthy line that we can use if we decide to put interfacing in. I don't think we're going to need interfacing. But just in case we do. So I'm going to leave that over to the side. I think that's all we need from this paper. And then let's take this, and we're going to do our usual with the shirt before we worry about the neckline. We're going to cut up the sides and cut the sleeves off and start from there. Okay, we've got the sleeves off and the sides are open. And I just do that for flatness. It's easier, obviously, but it's fixing to get flat anyway. I'm going to lay my ruler up against the ribs of or the pleats of the shirt to use it as a straight edge. And I'm going to cut off the sides all the way to the end. So it's going to take a little bit because... And I'm going to get into this sleeve seam just a bit, but we're going to be turning that under, so I'm not too concerned about it. I think it'll be okay. And we're going to do that, like I said, to both sides. We're going to do that to this side. This is a little weirder cut, obviously, because I got to go left-handed. Not my strong point. And that's why. There we go. Nope. Still gonna go right-handed. Okay, so that's these two sides so far. We're gonna continue down. Even though I'm gonna be cutting the bottom off of this, I want to go ahead and finish it out because I don't know exactly how long I want it. So we're just lining the ruler up with what we've already cut. Like that. And like this. And there we go. Whoop. All right, now we have the base of our shirt, and we got to figure out our collar. Okay, everybody, now we're going to fit the neckline. I've got the open circle, and I've got back and front marked on it. and it's folded in half like this. So that's the full circle. And I have folded my shirt in a way where the front button plackets, I've opened them and they're together, and the back seam is together, and the shoulder seam's together. Everything is pinned together to make sure that it's as straight as possible. And this obviously is the collar. I hope you can understand the way I folded it. You can see this is the front, you know. Anyway, it takes a little bit of finagling, but it folds like this and ends up looking like this. And I'm just going to take the back and pin it where I want it to be. And it's not going to be perfect, but that's okay. And we're going to pin it right here on the fold. This is, again, the fold of the back of the shirt. And then I'm going to pin the front a little bit like this. And I want it to be cut underneath, or right above that first button. Because we're going to leave that first button. Now, your shirt may be different. There's no telling where your button's going to land. It's going to depend your size, your neckline, all kinds of factors. But this is a simple way to cut a neckline, a nice round neckline, without any, extra steps. All right, so we've got our neckline pinned. And again, it's not perfect. It's just a matter of making sure that we don't hit that button there. And turn it around like this. And we're just going to cut the neckline. We're going to be brave. This is a little thick right here because it's the shoulder. And all these pleats are lovely to go across. And then let's take it off and see what we got. Hopefully we've got a round neckline. And then we're just going to put bias tape on that. Not going to be fancy about it. Put bias tape around it. And you know I love to do that. I hadn't done it in a while though. And this is our neckline. I cut the buttonhole. Y'all know I like to show my mistakes. So if you're going to do the collar that way, make sure you don't cut the buttonhole. But the good part is this collar shape and size is big enough to go over my head without that button. In other words, I don't need to button it. So I'm going to take this button off right here. And we can reapply it as a dummy button. Won't be a real button. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew my bias tape on and connect these two pieces like this. So I'm not going to have an opening here. I'm going to leave these buttons down here open, but this one is not going to have a button open. So I'm going to sew this, like I said, bias tape over this and sew these together. So let me go, and I'm going to stitch these together first because I want them to be even. So I'm going to even them up a little and stitch those together, and then we'll put the bias tape on. Okay, I'm just going to zip across here and close this up since I made the error of cutting the buttonhole. Can always be fixed. I'm just doing a little, really close to the edge stitch, just to kind of baste it, I guess. Make sure I catch both sides. Not sure if I did. Yeah, barely. Which is fine. I just want to baste it. Because we're going to put bias tape over it. Oops. There we go. Push the right button. So this is meeting it here, and now we're going to go run the bias tape. And what we'll do with the bias tape, let me go get it and I'll show y'all. All right, the bias tape is single fold bias tape. And what I'm going to do is try to open it. Struggle is real. Find the end. Now what it looks like is this. You can see that it's folded from both sides into the middle like this. And I think you've probably seen me do this a lot. And I'm going to start in the back. And this is the right side of the shirt here. And we're going to put this on the right side and only lift up one of those folds. We're going to leave about a 1/2 inch at the end down that we're not going to sew, that we're going to use to turn under. We'll turn, actually, you know what? We can go ahead and turn it under like that. So we'll turn that under about a 1/2 inch. And we're going to run this all along the entire neckline. And then when we're through and we've stitched it in the ditch right here in this little fold line, then we'll turn it in. It'll give us a nice finished edge. I've done this a lot. There's plenty of videos on it, but I just wanted to give you the basics. So I'm going to do it right off the reel here, or the, whatever that is. And the roll, the tab, no. And go around, and like I said, turn it under, and then we'll be top stitching it to make our finished edge. Okay, we've got the neckline in, and the bias tape worked great for that. I ended up catching that buttonhole so high up that I'm not going to worry about replacing it with a button because it's secured. So, you know, happy mistake, not a big deal. I also, while I was over there, went ahead and serged all the way up and down each of the sides, all the way over. You don't have to do that. I just like to have my raw edges finished when I turn them under for the seam. And the only thing, because we are going to be turning this seam, this edge under to make our edge. Now, we could, because this will be sleeveless, but we could put bias tape there, but I don't really think it's necessary because of the serge line. I'm going to be able to just flip it in, but you could use bias tape as well. That's another good use for it. Now, what we need to decide is how long we want this shirt, because it is a pretty standard size shirt. First, I want to make sure I get these. I want to make sure my shoulders are falling proper, because, you know, that's going to determine your length. I don't want them to be off kilter. Yeah, I think that's right. So we'll just smooth our fabric out here. Make sure we're lined up, not too far to one side or the other. Let's see. Yeah, that looks good. And I would like to have this pretty much the length of the placket there in the front, the tux portion. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to cut 1 inch below that. That'll give me plenty of room to serge it and to make sure that I have enough to put a little hem in it, because we can't use a natural hem on this particular one. Not the way we're, ooh, white on white. That's rough. All right. There we go. Just want to make sure I cut it straight. And an inch will give me an opportunity to make any corrections. But I think, voila, good. All right, now what we need to do is create our sides and hem it. And that's really it. And I'm going to make the sides out of the sleeves. You could make the sides out of anything. If you had enough left over at the bottom, that would be long enough. You could make that. You could take this, cut it in half, and make your sides. It's not, you could even use extra fabric, a fabric from another shirt, something like that, if you wanted to make it decorative like that. But I am going to use my sleeves. So I will hem this, and then I will put my sleeves in. Okay, everybody, at this point with our shirt, we need to close up the sides. And I've decided to do that with the sleeves. Now, unfortunately, they're in various stages because I've been experimenting. But essentially what I've done is I have cut the sleeve off at the beginning, and then I cut down the middle. Like if it was closed up like this would be the sleeve. This would have been a whole piece here, and then the buttons. I cut down the middle of the back so the buttons would be underneath my arm. And in this particular scenario, I have serged the sides and I went ahead and hemmed the bottom, but then I found it was a little short. So y'all know the rule, it's hard to make fabric up when you cut it off, but I had some more of the shirt tail left. So I hemmed it as well, and we're going to add it to the bottom of this part to make even longer little ruffle, okay? And I'll show you what this one looks like. This is my experiment one. As a matter of fact, let me mark my shirt. That way we won't lose our spot. Because it took me a while to gauge where I wanted that sleeve to go up under my arm. So let me take this off so I can show y'all what it looks like. It's a little less finished, or a little more finished than that piece. So I have, again, just cut the sleeve down the middle of the back, and I left it wide. In other words, I cut it wide this way to give it a little ruffle, little fullness. And then I added that extra piece that I needed to give it a little more length. And what I'm doing with the buttons is I'm taking one of these pretty little shank buttons. It's just gray, but they're kind of like a moon glow. And I'm taking a plain white button, about the same size though, and I am putting them on, wonder of wonder, with ribbon. It's some white silk ribbon that I have left over from my heirloom days. It's about, what is that, 1/8 inch ribbon? Maybe a little wider. Not much though. And I'm just threading this, whoop, sorry. It's hard to see it on white, but I'm just threading this big-eyed needle. It's kind of like a tapestry needle, but does have a point to it. So I've got my ribbon, and what I do is I send it up through my clear button, or my white button that's going to go on the back, and just leave it hanging. Just leave it hanging. I'll take this pen off. This was me trying things on. And I come up from the back of that hole, just like you would if you were using a cuffling. And then we're going to go through the shank. Pull it tight there. Have to get over that ribbon. Go back through the hole, and I'm not piercing any fabric here. I'm just going through the hole, the buttonhole that's already there for a cufflink. All right, and then once I've got it pulled tight, I'm going back up through the button like this, pulling the tail of the, there we go. So I'm giving a little snug tug. So it looks like that, and my other button is secured in the front. And I tried to do this with thread, but it didn't really want to hold well. And you could do it with like wire if you wanted to make it more like an actual cufflink. You could wire the buttons together. That would work too. I just opted for some ribbon, and this silk ribbon holds pretty well, but I may just put a couple of stitches in the knot so it doesn't go anywhere. Now, some of you are going to like the look of the little bow, so you could definitely put this on the outside of your piece. It would look really cute. I personally am just not into the bows today. I wanted this simple gray button to look more like a cufflink. So I'm going to put the other two buttons on same way, and then I'm going to go over to my machine, and I am going to attach this little extra piece that I have. It might need a little bit of a gather to go on here, and I'm going to sew it onto the end of my arm that's still kind of short. And then we're going to sew in the sides. Now, before I sew in the sides, I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is hem this serge line, and I'm just going to turn it under. And I'm going to do it all the way from one hem all the way over the shoulder into the other hem on both sides, and that's just going to finish the edge. And then what I'll do when I'm sewing the sleeve one is I'll just tuck it underneath this as opposed to sewing it to the seam. I mean, you know, anyway. You'll see. So let me put my buttons on, and I will meet y'all, as my mother likes to hear me say, over at the machine. Way over there, like just 2 steps. Okay, I found that I had already run a little gathering stitch down the side of this extra piece. It is, oops, rivals everywhere. About 17.5 inches by 3 inches finished like this. So I ran a stitch that is 4 millimeters wide down this. That way I can pull the bobbin thread, and we'll just do a little gather. It doesn't need much. Oh, and don't forget to mark your center like that right there, so you can match it with the center of the sleeve. You just need a gauging point. So you fold your end of your sleeve that you're going to be attaching it to like that. And I'm just going to put a pin in it. That's where I'm going to be pinning it anyway. Like that. So now I know where the center is on my sleeve. Okay, see it a little better on this gray. So again, I'm taking my bobbin thread on this little stitch I added to the bottom here, and I'm just gathering it. It doesn't take a lot of gather. It's just a little bit longer than this piece, so we just need to add a little bit of gather there to make it fit. And then we just gather from the other side. Same situation. That 4 millimeter stitch works better for me than the 3.5 millimeter stitch. Obviously it's looser, and this particular cotton thread is holding up so well that it'll hold the gather. Now if you're working with a looser fabric, you might want to do a tighter stitch to keep that gather in place. But all we're going to do is we're going to take that center mark. That's kind of a blind way to do this, because we're going to put this one underneath the hem that's already on our first piece, and this is just because we're adding to it as opposed to having a piece already long enough. So I'm pinning right here at the center, right there. And then I'm just going to, see, it doesn't take a lot of gathers. I have to straighten these out quite a bit. And that's pretty much it. We're just going to pin underneath here and go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew this on. This is just a way to add that little more fabric we wanted on the side, or I wanted on the side when I figured out I'd cut it too short. And you could have done this with a contrasting fabric. You could have done this with lace. You could have done it with anything. So it's a good feature to have. Even if you don't mess up, you could still cut it in two and make this feature, you know, the little additional ruffle at the bottom. Okay, this is the shirt. Kind of hard to show at this angle, but I marked that spot where I want the sleeve to start on the side and go down. I am going to go ahead and take the entire length from one hem to the other hem, and I'm going to just fold under that serge line and hem it all the way up. Now you could do this by putting on your shirt sleeve first and then hemming the rest of it while you're closing it up. That works too. I just wanted to go ahead and get this seam down before I put the other part on. Okay, I have hemmed the side from hem to hem over the shoulder. And the reason I did that first, instead of doing it like after I'd attached the sides, is because this gives me the opportunity to adjust the size. So what I did is I pinned it, tried it on, and realized I needed to bring these sleeves in up top in the front. Kind of like a reverse of a dart. So I have pulled them both in by about 1 3/4 inches, and I'm going to sew them at an angle down the side. Now they do not meet my hemline, and I do not care. That's not a problem for me. If you want them to go all the way to your hemline, then you can turn around and add or make them longer in the first place, like my smart butt did not. So I'm going to go and sew these down, and again, all I've done is pin them on at this point, but that gave me the ability to adjust them. So I'm going to sew them up one side and up the other side with the side underneath the piece that I've already hemmed. You can see like that. So I've just tucked it under here, and again, I've pulled it over 1 3/4 inches this way to give it an inward slope, so it'll meet my sides better underneath my arms. Okay, everybody, I think it turned out pretty cute. Couple of hiccups, obviously. I cut the sides a little too short, so I had to add back to them. I'm good with the way it doesn't meet the hemline, but you could change that. The buttons, I really like these on the side, but of course, if you wanted to reverse it where the little bows were outside, that would work too. I'll probably put a little slip stitch in the bow so they don't move, but it does make it easier to change your buttons out. So you could make them any color or anything you wanted. And I just think it turned out really super cute. It is not a 30-minute project unless you are prepared and have all your measurements ready. If you're testing things out like me, well, let's just say this one's been on the table for a bit. So, but I hope y'all enjoyed it. It's not a hard project. It's just a lot of kind of gauging what you want for your finished product. So give it a try. Like, subscribe. Let me know what you think, and I will catch y'all on the flip side of our next project.